The Trump administration, in breaking news, has filed its third application to the United States Supreme Court to try to get it and Chief Justice John Roberts to bail them out because they got a judge, Chief Judge Jeb Boesberg, who believes that they've done unconstitutional things in using phony war powers to deport people in the middle of the night to dank, dark, killer El Salvadorian prisons without due process. And they want to continue to do that. That's why Kristi Noem went to stand in front of the El Salvadorian prisons the last couple of days wearing a too tight white t-shirt and a $60,000 Rolex. Because they're waiting to continue to do it as long as they're allowed. Will the Supreme Court allow them to do it? An intermediary appellate court didn't on Wednesday, ruling against the Trump administration. That didn't sit well with the Trump administration. They want to go back after Jeb Boesberg, and I'm here to report on it on Legal AF. All right, let's dive in. Lots of moving parts here. On the one hand, you've got the judge who's extended the life of the temporary restraining order, blocking the Trump administration from continuing to use the Alien Enemies Act, a war power over a phony war about people who were here by migration and immigration, whether you like it or not invasion or predatory incursion, which is required in order to use the war power. He blocked the ability of the Trump administration to do that without due process. They didn't like that. They took it up to the appellate court. A 3-judge panel ruled 2-1 with Judge Millett and Judge Henderson in favor or against the Trump administration. They refused to block the temporary restraining order, block the ban, so to speak. And Judge Boesberg has extended the temporary restraining order till middle of April in the interim. Now, Trump goes out to the Supreme Court, first stop Chief Justice Roberts, to try to get the Supreme Court to block and reverse the D.C. appellate court and block the temporary restraining order. I'll explain it all, I promise. So 2 weeks ago Saturday, Chief Judge of the D.C. District Court, Jeb Boesberg, after a hearing, issued a temporary restraining order finding that it was more likely than not that the Trump administration had violated the Constitution because there was no enemy incursion or predatory invasion or war to justify going after these undocumented Venezuelans, narco-terrorist gang members though they may be. And if that were the case, then put your proof up to an adversarial hearing. Let's have due process. That's the judge's position, or as Judge Millett put it in her writing when she ruled against the Trump administration on Wednesday, we're at the intersection of due process under the Fifth Amendment and the Alien Enemies Act. And there needs to be due process. And all the judges that have looked at this, and we'll wait to see if the Supreme Court makes a decision, says that it is a judge's role since effectively 1803. In Marbury versus Madison, a very famous case that I learned of for about 6 weeks one summer when I was in law school, stands for the proposition that a federal judge interprets proclamations against statutes, against the Constitution, to determine if the president has properly exercised war powers or any powers under his Article II authority. That's what federal judges under Article III are supposed to do in a co-equal branch of government. This is why we don't have wet noodles and rubber stamps for federal judges like we do in the Trump administration in the Department of Justice with Pam Bondi. Okay, now fast forward. While they're sending off these people to this dark, dank, killer prison in El Salvador, where hundreds of people have died in the last year, because they have an agreement and a deal. That's what they're characterizing in the Trump administration as national security interest and foreign relation agreements negotiated by the president. You can't interfere. All right, come on. The fact that you're paying off the El Salvadorian dictator president, Bukele, with $6 million in order to put these people in and fill up his supermax prison, that's not a proper exercise of war power. The only time the Alien Enemies Act has ever been exercised and invoked by a president, it was the War of 1812, the World War I and World War II, basically to put Italians and Germans and Japanese in concentration camps. But even they got due process, which Judge Millett reminded the Trump administration during the hearing. Even the Nazis got due process. So the Trump administration, through its acting interim solicitor general, filed an application today with the United States Supreme Court. First stop on the train, Chief Justice Roberts, he presides over all things in D.C., asking to have Jeb Boesberg, the trial judge's injunction lifted to allow for the deportations without due process in the middle of the night on these secret planes to an abusive prison, that people die in. That's what they want to do. And Kristi Noem can't wait with her Ice Barbie look cosplay. And the only issue is whether this injunction is going to stay in place for the duration of the appeal, which could last 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or it's going to be lifted while they appeal. It's a bad sign if the Supreme Court enters an injunction, a stay, to block Boesberg. It means they think that he's done something wrong from a constitutional analysis standpoint. Now, here's the order of operation. Roberts can decide, especially since it's a Friday, to do an administrative stay, short-timey thing, maybe 48 to 72 hours, allow for another brief to be filed, and let the whole court decide whether there's going to be a stay. You need 4 votes to take the case up on the application to find it interesting. They don't always do it, and 5 votes in your favor. You got to count to 5 with the United States Supreme Court in order to rule. I think they lose. I think maybe Roberts gives the administrative stay for a short time. I think he asks the other side, which is the American Civil Liberties Union and Democracy Forward, to file their opposing brief to the application. With those 2 briefs in hand, I think they make their decision next week. And I think they keep the Boesberg order in place, which is only about a temporary restraining order, even now advanced until the middle of April. And there's no irreparable. What is the irreparable harm? The government has to show irreparable harm. What is it? They can stay in detention. The judge has said that. The Judge Boesberg's order does not stop people from being detained, interned, jailed, imprisoned. It just means they have to have a hearing. And they can't be sent to El Salvador. That's it. You can still arrest people under it, according to the judge. You can put them in jail. You just can't deport them without process, either through the immigration laws and an immigration judge, or some other way. That's really what the injunction's about. It's not as existential or expansive as the Trumpers would have you believe. So I think they're going to support Boesberg. Remember, Chief Justice John Roberts came to Boesberg's defense last week when he told Trump, stop bashing him and stop talking about impeachment. Just take your appeal. So we'll continue to follow what happens. Come right here on Legal AF. I'll update you every hour, every day, only here. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button. And then, of course, go over to our Legal AF YouTube channel. You're here already. Hit that. Legal AF, the podcast, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Midas Touch Network. We're top 10 in the world. It's hard to believe with all your help. We're humbled by that. And then I do my hot takes as well on the Midas Touch Network. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.